The massive chamber of the Galactic Council stretched upward into darkness, its curved walls lined with floating platforms where representatives from 1,000 worlds sat in judgment. At the center of the chamber, a single human stood on the speaker's platform, his simple black suit drawing curious looks from the assembled aliens. James Walker took a deep breath, adjusting his tie. After 20 years of diplomatic service, this was the moment that would define his career. Humanity's formal application to join the Galactic Council. The air felt thick with tension as countless alien eyes studied his every move. The council chairperson, a tall being with silvery skin that seemed to ripple like water, spoke in a voice that echoed through the chamber. Ambassador Walker, we have reviewed Earth's application for membership. Your species has achieved faster than light travel, unified your planet's governments, and shown acceptable levels of technological advancement. However, there is one matter that concerns us: your military capabilities. Walker nodded, expecting this. He pressed a button on his datapad, and holographic images appeared above the platform, showing various human weapons and vehicles. Laughter erupted from one of the higher platforms. The source was a starborn representative, his crystalline body gleaming under the chamber's lights. Honorable Chairperson, surely you jest. They still use projectile weapons, pieces of metal propelled by chemical explosions. More laughter spread through the chamber. Walker remained calm, though his jaw tightened slightly. The starborn representative continued, his voice dripping with mockery. Look at these primitive devices. While we have mastered energy weapons, plasma cannons, and neural disruptors, they throw metal pieces at their enemies. It's like bringing stones to a space battle. The chairperson raised a hand for silence. Ambassador Walker, would you care to respond to these concerns? Walker smiled slightly. With respect, we find our current weapons technology quite effective. Sometimes the simplest solutions are the best ones. But your ships would be helpless against our energy shields, another representative called out. Even our smallest vessels can generate fields that nothing can penetrate. Nothing. Walker asked quietly, but his question was lost in another wave of laughter. From his platform, General Stone of the Starborn Military Council leaned forward, his crystalline features arranged in what passed for a smirk among his kind. Perhaps a demonstration would help. Would you like to see what real weapons can do, Ambassador? The general gestured, and a hologram appeared showing a starborn warship firing at an asteroid. The energy beam completely vaporized the massive rock. Impressive, Walker acknowledged. But with all due respect, we prefer our methods. He switched his own hologram to show a human naval railgun in action. The assembled aliens watched with amusement as the seemingly primitive weapon fired. How quaint, the general chuckled. It seems humans haven't changed much since they were throwing spears at each other. The chairperson raised their hand again. While these concerns are noted, Earth has met the basic requirements for membership. Ambassador Walker, your species will be granted provisional membership in the Galactic Council, with certain restrictions on military operations outside your current territory. Walker bowed slightly. We accept these terms with gratitude. As the chamber began to empty, the Starborn General floated down to Walker's platform. A word of advice, Ambassador. You might want to start adapting some real weapons technology. The galaxy can be a dangerous place for primitive species. Walker met the General's gaze steadily. Thank you for your concern, General. We'll keep that in mind. He paused, then added, though I should mention, that railgun demonstration you laughed at. The projectile was traveling at only 2% of its maximum velocity. We didn't want to damage any of the nearby monitoring satellites. The General's crystalline form flickered slightly, but he dismissed the comment with a wave and floated away. As Walker gathered his materials, he couldn't help but smile. Let them laugh. Let them dismiss humanity's weapons as primitive. They'd learn soon enough that sometimes the old ways worked best. After all, no energy shield, no matter how advanced, could repeal the basic laws of physics, and humans had gotten very, very good at using those laws to throw things at their enemies. 3 months after Earth joined the Galactic Council, Colonel Robert Mills stood at the observation deck of Outpost 7, watching the stars. The small mining colony beneath the outpost was one of humanity's furthest settlements, and lately it had been getting unwanted attention. A young lieutenant hurried onto the deck, holding a data tablet. "Sir, another starborne patrol crossed into our space. 3rd time this week." Mills took the tablet, his weathered face growing harder as he read the report. The starborne ships had come closer this time, their energy weapons powered but not firing. Testing the waters, seeing how humans would respond. "Did they reply to our warnings?" Mills asked, though he already knew the answer. "They sent back the usual message, sir. Said their sensors didn't detect our primitive boundary markers and suggested we upgrade to proper galactic standard beacons." Mills handed back the tablet. 25 years in the military had taught him to recognize the signs of coming trouble. The starborne weren't just being arrogant. They were preparing for something. At that moment, his computer chimed. A priority message from Earth Command appeared on the screen. Council MEETANG requested. Bor dir DISPUTEDISTUSSION. Colonel Mills to ATTND as military advisor. 2 days later, Mills stood before the Galactic Council. The chamber felt colder than before, the floating platforms now filled with tense faces. The starborne representatives sat in their usual high position, their crystalline bodies glowing with barely concealed contempt. The council chairperson spoke first. "We have received multiple complaints from the Starborne Empire about human military installations near their trade routes. They claim these installations pose a threat to peaceful space traffic." "With respect, Chairperson," Mills replied, "those installations are well within human territory that this council recognized when accepting Earth's membership." The Starborne military commander, General Stone, let out a sharp laugh. "Territory? You can barely defend it. Our scans show nothing but basic sensor arrays and those laughable projectile weapons. One starborne cruiser could eliminate your entire defensive line." Mills stayed calm, though his hands tightened behind his back. "I would strongly advise against testing that theory, General." "Is that a threat, Colonel?" The general's crystalline form pulsed with angry light. "Perhaps we should demonstrate the difference between our technologies. A simple exercise to show the council why primitive weapons have no place in modern space warfare." An older council member, a beam made of swirling gas, moved their platform forward. "The council does not approve of military demonstrations, General. We are here to discuss peaceful solutions." Mills stepped forward. "If I may, I have a proposal. We will withdraw 20% of our defensive platforms if the Starborne agree to respect our marked boundaries." "Withdraw them all," General Stone demanded. "Replace them with proper energy-based systems. We can even sell you the technology at a reasonable price." Mills shook his head. "We prefer our current systems." "Then you prefer to remain vulnerable," the general sneered. "Very well. The Starborne Empire cannot guarantee the safety of ships that venture near such dangerous, unstable weapons. Accidents do happen." The threat was clear. Mills looked around the chamber, seeing the other council members shift uncomfortably. None wanted to challenge the Starborne Empire. "I need to be clear about something," Mills said, his voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. "Those defensive platforms you mock, they're not there to stop you from entering our space. They're there to stop us from having to respond if you do. Because while you've mastered energy weapons, we've mastered something far simpler: momentum." The general waved dismissively. "Spare us your primitive physics lessons, Colonel. This meeting is over." He turned to the chairperson. "The Starborne Empire formally protests the presence of unsafe human weapons near our trade routes. We will take appropriate measures to protect our ships." As the council session ended, Mills received an urgent message from Outpost 7. Starborne ships were gathering at the border in growing numbers. Their energy shields flickered like distant stars, a display of power meant to intimidate. Mills watched the council members hurry away, none willing to meet his eyes. They all believed humanity was about to learn a harsh lesson about modern warfare. But Mills knew better. The Starborn were about to learn that sometimes the old ways were best, and that humanity had spent centuries perfecting the art of throwing very heavy objects very, very fast. The warning signs were clear. War was coming, and the galaxy was about to learn why you should never underestimate human ingenuity. The attack came at Earth's night cycle. 3 Starborn warships dropped out of hyperspace near Outpost 7, their crystalline hulls gleaming against the backdrop of stars. They moved with absolute confidence, energy shields blazing like miniature suns. In the outpost's command center, Lieutenant Parker's hands flew across the control panel. Colonel Mills, 3 Starborn cruisers just appeared. They're powering up weapons. Mills had been expecting this. He barely slept in the past week, waiting for the Starborn to make their move. Send the warning message. Message sent, sir. They're laughing. Audio coming through. The general's voice filled the command center, dripping with mockery. This is your only warning, humans. Remove your mining colony and those primitive weapons, or we will remove them for you. You have 10 minutes to begin evacuation. Mills pressed the comm button. This is Colonel Mills. General, you are in violation of Council space laws and human territory. Withdraw immediately. Ah, Colonel Mills. Good. I wanted you to see this, to understand the difference between real weapons and your toys. Begin the attack. The first Starborn ship fired its energy weapon, a beam of pure destruction that would have vaporized any normal target. It struck the outpost's outer defense ring and dissipated harmlessly. In the command center, Mills allowed himself a small smile. They really should have studied their history. Defensive Position Alpha, you are cleared to fire. Hidden in the asteroid field surrounding the outpost, 6 rail gun platforms powered up. Each one housed a simple weapon, just a long metal tube with electromagnetic accelerators. No fancy energy beams, no plasma fields, just old-fashioned physics. The Starborn ships detected the power surge. What's this? The general's voice showed the first hint of concern. Some new energy weapon you've bought from. The rail guns fired. 6 tungsten rods, each weighing just 20 kilograms, accelerated to 15% of light speed. They crossed the space between the platforms and the Starborn ships in less than a second. The general's shield flared brilliantly as the first rod approached. The shield was designed to stop energy weapons, to absorb and deflect them. But there was nothing it could do about simple kinetic energy. The rod punched through the shield as if it wasn't there, then through the crystalline hull of the ship. The general had just enough time to realize his mistake before his ship split in half. Target 1 down, Lieutenant Parker reported calmly. Targets 2 and 3 are attempting to raise additional shields. The remaining ships tried to turn, to bring more power to their shields. But physics didn't care about their advanced technology. 2 more salvos of tungsten rods turned their beautiful ships into expanding clouds of crystalline debris. In the sudden silence that followed, Mills opened a channel to all frequencies. This is Colonel Mills of Outpost 7. To any Starborn ships monitoring this frequency, that was 6 shots from our smallest defensive platforms. We have 30 more platforms in this sector alone. Think carefully about your next move. The command center erupted in cheers, but Mills raised his hand for silence. Send the battle data to the council. They need to understand what just happened here. Sir, Parker looked up from her screen. We're getting signals. Lots of signals. Every council species is requesting information about our defensive systems. Mills nodded. Send them the basics. They're about to learn that humanity didn't survive thousands of years of warfare by being stupid. We survived by getting very, very good at what we do. He turned to look at the main screen, where the debris of 3 Starborn ships drifted in space. Somewhere in the Empire, someone was about to have a very difficult conversation about underestimating primitive weapons. Lieutenant, "Get me Earth Command. The Starborn aren't going to take this lying down. They'll be back, and next time they'll bring their whole fleet." He paused, looking at the tactical display. "And send a message to all human outposts. Operation Newton is now in effect." "Operation Newton, sir." Mild smiled grimly. "Named after the physicist. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. The Starborn threw the first punch, but we're going to throw the last one. And we're going to throw it very, very hard." The stars seemed to shine brighter as the news spread across human space. The first battle had been fought, and humanity's primitive weapons had proven their worth. But this was just the beginning. The real war was about to start, and the galaxy was about to learn why you should never corner a species that had perfected the art of war over thousands of years of constant practice. The emergency council meeting was chaos. Representatives from 50 species talked at once, their voices echoing through the great chamber. The Starborn section stood empty, 3 crystalline seats notably vacant, a stark reminder of the ships they had lost. Ambassador Walker stood at the center platform again, but this time he wasn't alone. Dr. Emma Reed, Earth's leading weapons physicist, stood beside him, her gray hair tied back neatly as she arranged her presentation materials. The council chairperson raised their silver hands for silence. "This emergency session will come to order. We are here to discuss the incident at Outpost 7, where human weapons destroyed 3 Starborn cruisers." Ambassador Walker explained these actions. Before Walker could speak, the Starborn High Command's new representative, Acting General West, burst out. "Their primitive weapons shouldn't have been able to penetrate our shields. They must have used illegal technology." Dr. Reed stepped forward. "Actually, we used very simple physics. May I demonstrate?" She pressed a button, and a hologram appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed a basic diagram of a Starborn shield meeting the human projectile. "The problem," she began, speaking as if she were teaching a first-year physics class, "isn't with your shields. Your energy barriers are excellent at stopping energy weapons. But you forgot something very basic." She pointed to the diagram. "Your shields are designed to absorb or deflect energy attacks. But our weapons don't rely on energy discharge. They rely on momentum. And momentum," she smiled, "doesn't care about your shields." The hologram changed to show the actual footage from Outpost 7. The council chamber fell silent as they watched the tungsten rods tear through the Starborn ships. Each projectile, Dr. Reed continued, weighed 20 kilograms and was traveling at 15% of light speed. That's approximately 45,000 kilometers per second. The kinetic energy on impact was roughly equivalent to a small nuclear weapon. A reptilian council member leaned forward. "But our sensors show your weapons using electromagnetic fields. We thought they were energy weapons." "The electromagnetic fields are just the delivery system," Dr. Reed explained. "Like a very advanced slingshot. The weapon itself is just a piece of metal, moving very, very fast." Walker stepped forward. "Members of the council, humanity hasn't been hiding any advanced technology. We've simply been perfecting the basics. While other species focused on energy weapons, we focused on making things go fast." The chamber erupted in murmurs. A gaseous being floated closer. "But why not adopt energy weapons? Surely they are more civilized." Dr. Reed shook her head. "Because energy weapons have an inherent flaw. They can be blocked by energy shields. But no shield, no matter how advanced, can stop momentum without massive energy costs. It's simply physics." She brought up another diagram. "Look at it this way. If I throw a rock at your head, what matters isn't the type of rock. What matters is how fast it's going. Now imagine that rock moving at a significant fraction of light speed." The acting Starborn general's crystalline form flickered with anger. "This is absurd. You expect us to believe that your victory was due to such primitive concepts. Would you like another demonstration?" Dr. Reed asked quietly. The general fell silent. The council chairperson spoke after a long moment. This raises serious concerns. If these weapons are as effective as demonstrated, they could upset the military balance in the galaxy. Walker nodded, which is why we've been careful with them. The weapons that destroyed those ships were among our smallest models. We have larger ones, but we hope we never need to use them. Larger? Someone asked nervously. Our largest mass drivers can accelerate moon-sized projectiles, Dr. Reed said matter-of-factly. We call them planet crackers, though we've never actually used one. We're quite proud of the engineering, actually. The recoil dampeners alone air. Walker touched her arm gently, and she fell silent. The council chamber had gone very quiet. The chairperson spoke into the silence. I believe we need to reconsider our assessment of human military capabilities. And perhaps, they looked at the empty starborne seats, reconsider our assumptions about technological advancement. As they left the chamber later, Walker glanced at Dr. Reed. Did you have to mention the planet crackers? She shrugged. They needed to understand. Sometimes the simplest solution is the best one. Humanity learned that lesson a long time ago. In the days that followed, the Council's archives were flooded with requests from various species, all seeking information about one thing: basic physics. The starborne fleet appeared from hyperspace like a crystal forest looming in the void. 500 warships, their hulls gleaming with enhanced energy shields, surrounded Earth's outer colonies. It was the largest fleet gathered in a century. In Earth's primary defense command center, Colonel Mills watched the tactical display with Admiral Turner at his side. Red dots representing starborne ships filled the screen. They brought their entire fleet, Turner said, her voice calm despite the situation. Just as you predicted. Mills nodded. They think numbers will save them, that we won't have enough weapons to stop them all. He pressed the comm button. All stations, Operation Newton is now in full effect. Authorization code, Isaac 1687. Across human space, hidden weapons platforms powered up. Not the small rail guns that had destroyed the 3 ships at Outpost 7. These were humanity's real weapons. The Starborne High Commander's transmission cut through all frequencies. Attention, human forces. Your primitive weapons may have succeeded once through luck. But now you face the full might of the Starborne Empire. Surrender your colonies and submit to our authority, or be destroyed. Admiral Turner took a deep breath. Should we show them our response, Colonel? Yes, Mills said. Activate the Archimedes array. Deep in the asteroid belt, a massive structure shifted. It looked like a simple mining station from the outside. But as its outer shell peeled away, it revealed what humans had spent 50 years building. A mass driver large enough to fire a small moon. In the Starborne fleet, alarms began blaring. Their sensors detected an enormous power surge, larger than anything they'd ever seen. What trickery is this? The High Commander demanded. Our scans show no energy weapons. Mills opened a channel. You're right. No energy weapons. We just built a very, very big gun. He turned to Turner. Show them what humanity does best, Admiral. Archimedes array, you are cleared to fire, Turner commanded. Target, grid section 14A. The array fired. A chunk of refined asteroid, 3 kilometers wide, accelerated to 20% of light speed. The recoil shook the entire solar system. The projectile crossed the space between Earth and the Starborne fleet in seconds. It struck the center of their formation. No shield could stop that much mass moving that fast. 20 Starborne ships simply ceased to exist, turned to vapor by the kinetic energy of impact. But humanity wasn't done. All orbital platforms. Execute Operation Newton, Mills ordered. Across human space, hundreds of defense platforms revealed themselves. Each one was armed with scaled-down versions of the Archimedes array. They had turned asteroids into ammunition, preparing for this moment for years. The Starborne fleet tried to scatter. Their ships, beautiful and advanced as they were, had never been designed to dodge solid projectiles moving at relativistic speeds. Their shields, optimized for energy weapons, might as well have been tissue paper. By the eternal stars, a council observer whispered, watching from a safe distance. They turned their entire territory into one giant weapon. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted less than 10 minutes. When it ended, half the starborn fleet had been reduced to drifting crystal shards. The other half flew into hyperspace, their formation shattered. In the command center, Mills watched the tactical display clear. Send word to all colonies. Threat neutralized. Turner looked at the damage reports coming in. The Archimedes array will need 3 days to cool down and reload. Some of the orbital platforms are reporting stress fractures from the recoil. But, sir, we only use 10% of our total ammunition stockpile. Mills nodded. Send that information to the Starborn High Command. Let them know that next time, we won't start with a warning shot. A warning shot. Turner raised an eyebrow. That chunk of rock vaporized 20 of their ships. Like I said, Mills smiled grimly. A warning shot. Humanity spent centuries fighting itself. Admiral, we got very good at finding ways to throw things at our enemies. The Starborn just learned why you don't start a fight with a species that turned Newton's laws of motion into weapons of mass destruction. As news of the battle spread, other Council species began frantically updating their military doctrines. The age of energy weapons was over. The galaxy was about to enter a new era, one where humanity's primitive understanding of physics would change everything. And somewhere in the ruins of their fleet, the Starborn were learning a harsh lesson. Sometimes the simplest solution is the deadliest. 1 month after the Great Battle, the Galactic Council chamber looked very different. Where once the Starborn had occupied the highest platforms in a show of dominance, their representatives now sat lower, their crystalline forms dimmed with humility. Most striking was the crowd of technical advisors from various species clustered around the human section, all carrying data pads and asking questions. Ambassador Walker entered the chamber, noting how other representatives now watched him with a mixture of respect and wariness. Dr. Reed walked beside him, already surrounded by alien scientists eager to learn about kinetic weapons. Is it true? A reptilian scientist asked, hurrying alongside them. Can you teach us how to build these mass drivers? The basic physics isn't complicated, Dr. Reed began, but was interrupted by the council chairperson calling for order. The chamber quieted as the Starborn acting high commander stood to speak. His crystalline form showed visible cracks, battle damage from the recent conflict. The Starborn Empire, he began, his once proud voice, now subdued, formally requests peace negotiations with Earth. Weak, he seemed to struggle with the words, acknowledge the effectiveness of their defensive capabilities. Walker stood. Earth accepts the peace request. We have prepared terms that we believe are fair to all parties. The High Commander's form flickered with relief, but before he could respond, a commotion broke out in the chamber's lower levels. The representatives from the Trade Confederation were arguing loudly with several other species. You can't monopolize human weapons technology. A Trade Confederation member shouted. It must be shared for the good of all. Shared. Someone else called out. You mean you want it for yourselves? The chairperson's voice cut through the chaos. Order. This brings us to our next matter. Multiple council species have requested access to human kinetic weapon designs. Walker nodded. Earth is willing to share basic principles of kinetic weapons with peaceful species, under proper oversight. However, certain technologies, like the Archimedes array, will remain classified. The Trade Confederation representative stood. Our analysis shows your weapons are simply advanced versions of basic physics principles. You cannot claim ownership of physics itself. Dr. Reed stepped forward. True, the physics is basic, but have you calculated the energy requirements for the recoil dampeners, or solved the heat dissipation equations for relativistic impacts, or developed the targeting systems that can hit a moving ship with a projectile moving at 20% of light speed? The chamber went quiet as she continued. We'll happily teach you the physics, But there's a difference between understanding the principles and building a weapon that won't tear your ship apart when you fire it. In their lower platform, the starborn representatives shifted uncomfortably. They had learned this lesson the hard way. Several of their ships had been destroyed by their own rushed attempts to copy human weapons. The chairperson spoke again. The Council recognizes Earth's right to protect its advanced military technology. However, we propose a compromise. Earth will establish a training program to help interested species develop safe kinetic weapon systems. Walker glanced at his data pad, where new orders from Earth Command had just arrived. We agree with one condition. All weapons development must comply with the Newton Accords. The Newton Accords? Several voices asked at once. A new set of guidelines, Walker explained, for the safe development and use of kinetic weapons. After all, we don't want anyone accidentally destroying a planet while learning about momentum. As the chamber erupted in excited discussion, the Starborn High Commander approached Walker privately. We underestimated your species, he admitted. We thought advancing beyond kinetic weapons meant abandoning them. We never considered perfecting them instead. Walker smiled diplomatically. A common mistake. Sometimes moving forward means taking a fresh look at the basics. He paused. By the way, your scientists might be interested in some of our earlier designs. They're simpler, but very effective for learning the principles. The commander's crystalline form brightened slightly. We would be honored to learn. Perhaps we could start with something small, like the rail guns at Outpost 7. As Walker discussed technical details with the commander, Dr. Reed watched other species representatives frantically studying physics texts on their data pads. The galaxy was changing, embracing humanity's primitive but devastatingly effective approach to space warfare. The age of energy weapons was over. The time of kinetic warfare had begun, and humanity, the species that had spent millennia throwing rocks at its problems, was now the galaxy's teacher. 6 months after the Great Battle, the Galactic Council gathered for a historic session. The chamber looked very different now. New kinetic weapon warning symbols decorated the walls, and technical diagrams of mass drivers had replaced the ancient energy weapon designs that had hung there for centuries. Ambassador Walker sat in Earth's newly positioned platform, now placed among the high seats of the Council's most respected members. Below, Colonel Mills and Dr. Reed sat with a group of human technical advisors, surrounded by students from 30 different species. The chairperson's voice echoed through the chamber. Today marks the final ratification of the Newton Accords, establishing guidelines for kinetic weapon development across Council space. But first, we recognize High Commander Turner to present the Military Readiness Report. Admiral Turner, recently promoted to High Commander of the Joint Council Defense Force, stood at the central platform. Her new uniform carried both Earth and Council insignias. The first class of the Kinetic Warfare Academy has completed training, she announced. 27 species have successfully developed and tested basic rail gun systems. 15 have progressed to medium-range mass drivers, and the Joint Human Starborn Research Team has made excellent progress on recoil dampening technology. The Starborn representatives, their crystalline forms now decorated with small Newton's law equations, nodded in approval. Their leader, former Acting General West, had become one of the strongest advocates for human-style weapons. Furthermore, Turner continued, the combined fleet exercises have shown that mixed weapon loadouts, traditional energy weapons paired with kinetic systems, provide the best defensive capabilities. We are stronger together than apart. The council chamber filled with approving murmurs. Walker smiled, remembering how just months ago, these same beings had laughed at primitive human weapons. The chairperson spoke again. Now we turn to Ambassador Walker for Earth's statement on the future of Council military doctrine. Walker stood, holding a small metal sphere, a museum piece from Earth's first space warfare experiments. Members of the Council, look at this simple ball of metal. 2,000 years ago, humans threw rocks at each other. 1,000 years ago, we used gunpowder to throw them faster. 500 years ago, we learned to throw them into space. He placed the sphere on a display pedestal. We never stopped throwing rocks. We just got better at it. While other species pursued more elegant weapons, we kept refining the basics. Not because we couldn't develop energy weapons, we have them too, but because sometimes the simplest solution is the best one. The sphere began to float, suspended in a demonstration field. The Newton Accords ensure that kinetic weapon technology will be developed safely and responsibly. But they represent something more important, the recognition that progress doesn't always mean complexity. Sometimes it means perfecting the fundamentals. Former General West floated down to the central platform. If I may add something. At Walker's nod, he continued, the Starborn Empire was wrong. We confused advancement with abandonment. We thought moving forward meant leaving the past behind. Humanity taught us that true progress means building on your foundations, not abandoning them. Dr. Reed stood next, which is why the new Galactic Science Academy will focus on both energy and kinetic physics. Both have their place. Both have their strengths. The future lies in understanding all our options. The chairperson raised their hands. The Council recognizes Earth's contribution to galactic security. The Newton Accords are now officially ratified. Let the record show that on this day, the galaxy entered a new era of balanced warfare doctrine. As the session ended, Colonel Mills approached Walker. Quite a change from your first council meeting. Walker picked up the metal sphere, feeling its weight. They're not laughing anymore. No, Mills agreed. Now they're learning. Though I heard the Trade Confederation is still struggling with the recoil calculations. They'll get it eventually. Dr. Reed joined them. Everyone does, once they stop overthinking it. Physics is physics, after all. Walker looked around the chamber, at the mixed groups of humans and aliens discussing trajectory calculations and momentum equations. You know what the best part is? They're not just copying our weapons anymore. They're improving them. The Starborn Crystal Matrix railgun design is actually quite brilliant. Mills nodded. Turns out when you combine primitive physics with advanced technology, amazing things happen. The metal sphere gleamed under the chamber's lights, a simple object that had changed the galaxy. Humanity had earned its place among the stars not through complexity, but through mastery of the basics. And in doing so, they had taught the galaxy a lesson it would never forget. Never underestimate the species that spent its entire history learning better ways to throw rocks.